Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. The Housemaid, a psychological thriller movie starring Amanda Seyfried and Sydney Sweeney, is coming out on December 19th. And if you're like me and you like to read the book before the movie comes out, but maybe you just didn't get a chance to, I read it for you so you don't have to, though I really think you should. In this video, I'll be breaking down the plot and all the twisty turns, share what I thought worked and what didn't, and what I hope the adaptation gets right. I'll be reviewing the movie as soon as it comes out, so if you want to be notified when that video drops, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Timestamps are down below in case you want to skip to a particular section of the video. This video will contain the Housemaid spoilers, so just be aware. And I think that's all the housekeeping that I wanted to get through, no pun intended, so let's dive in. So we kick off the story with a prologue that also acts as foreshadowing to what is going to happen toward the end of the story. We don't exactly know whose POV we're in. What we do know is that detectives have come to the house to investigate why there is a dead body in the attic. Our ambiguous protagonist is confused why they haven't read her rights, which is a clever way of making us think that she is in fact the killer. And then we flash back to 3 months earlier and land smack dab in the middle of a job interview for a live-in housemaid position at a fancy Long Island mansion. Our protagonist, Millie Calloway, really needs a job because she just came out of prison after a 10-year sentence. She got fired from her last crappy job and she's been living in a car, so she's definitely in a bit of a pickle right now. But the thing is, she has little hope that Nina Winchester, the fancy woman dressed in all white who's interviewing her, will ever consider somebody who is on parole right now. Plus, Millie pulled a Joey from Friends and embellished her resume to the point where the fact that she's a good cook is pretty much the only thing on there that is actually true. Millie and Nina are both from Brooklyn, but otherwise they couldn't be more different. Nina is at least 10 years older. She's the super classy suburban housewife with not much to do. Millie, on the other hand, has a troubled past and is wearing a pair of fake prescription glasses she bought for the interview because she does not want to be perceived as a threat. And yet, it's Nina who's trying really hard to upsell this live-in maid position to Millie, which is kind of weird. She says that she really needs help with cooking, cleaning, taking care of her daughter Cecilia. The pay is amazing, and the house is immaculate, something to keep in mind for later. Sure, the attic Nina would turn into the maid's quarters is tiny and kind of creepy, and actually so is Cecilia, but it would still beat living in a car by a mile. Millie checks out the tattooed and muscly landscaper as she leaves the interview, but she does leave disappointed because as soon as Nina runs a background check on her, Millie's name is 100% going to be crossed off the list of potential candidates. By chapter 2, a week has passed and Millie has lost all hope. I mean, if the burger place that she applied to turned her down, no way will a millionaire let a criminal anywhere near her kid and her expensive trinkets, or that's what Millie seems to think at the moment. So imagine Millie's surprise when she gets a call from Nina and is offered the position. So it is move-in day for Millie. I believe it's the next day. She's having trouble getting into the Winchester mansion and asks this muscly, gorgeous, olive-skinned landscaper for help, but for some reason he doesn't seem to want anything to do with her, which definitely strikes Millie as kind of odd. There is a language barrier, so she thinks that he only speaks Italian, so we do get this funny scene of Millie trying to communicate with him and somehow ending up speaking Spanish instead of Italian. It is pretty funny. But she's the one eventually left confused when Enzo whispers her a single word in Italian.
Pericolo.
More on that later. Enter Nina. She's still sugary sweet as she was during the interview, and she's even kind enough to give Millie her very own cell phone and put Millie on the family plan. But what's changed is the house. Somehow, in a span of a week, it's turned into, well, an actual pigsty. To make matters worse, Nina didn't tell her husband Andrew that she was hiring a live-in maid, and he doesn't seem to be super happy about it. And the crammed attic Millie is supposed to live in has a lock outside of the door and a window that doesn't open. So Millie's like, okay, maybe this isn't working out as good as I was hoping. Essentially. Millie does ask for the key, but other than that, she doesn't want to seem too demanding when she hasn't even started to actually work in the mansion, so she doesn't bring up the window just yet. When Nina leaves her to get settled in, Millie makes use of her new cell phone and does a search for
Pericolo.
which, as she finds out, means danger in English. Yep, not suspicious at all. The job Millie was so excited for just a few days ago is not panning out to be what she expected. Still, she keeps at it. She's busy cleaning, which is fine, but Cecilia, Nina and Andrew's daughter, creeps her out. Like, she pretty much compares Cecilia to a ghost. Still, taking care of Cecilia is part of Millie's job description, so when Cece asks for a snack, she's happy to make her a peanut butter banana cracker plate, which to me sounds delicious. Only when she does this, Cecilia accuses Millie of trying to kill her because she's apparently allergic to peanuts, an allergy Millie was not told about, and it's a pretty serious one, so you would think Nina would have mentioned something. But not according to Nina, who runs downstairs to see what all the screaming is about and accuses Millie of being careless because she 100% told Millie about the allergy. But why then is there a huge jar of peanut butter in the house, and why, when Millie asks if she can throw it out, does Nina tell her no? Things are just not adding up. But at the same time, Millie is afraid of getting fired and thinking that maybe she did get it wrong. She ends up apologizing and just hopes for the best. Things do seem to pick back up when Millie leans into her talents and cooks the Winchesters a delicious dinner. So delicious, in fact, that Andrew compliments her, and even Nina seems to have forgotten all about this peanut butter debacle. But when Millie wakes up at night because she wants to go pee, a very strange thing happens. The door to the attic does not open and she's not able to get out. She's sure she's been locked in, but when she tries to open the door again, it finally opens. Even though the logical part of Millie's brain tells her that the door was simply stuck, she still can't shake the feeling that she needs to leave. Probably also partly due to Enzo's warning. Things only keep getting worse, and Nina's behavior continues to get weirder and weirder, which in and of itself is very strange because Nina, even though she might have been a bit ignorant and bitchy, seemed to be very nice in the beginning. Nina makes a crazy mess in the kitchen that Millie spent hours cleaning the day prior, and accuses Millie of throwing away her PTA notes when Millie didn't even know that they existed. Why Nina pulled all the food out of the fridge and even broke dishes looking for these notes is anyone's guess. When Millie asks Enzo, the landscaper, to help her bring in groceries that she bought after the whole kitchen thing, Nina accuses Millie of having company, then gets mad a second time when Millie explains that it was only Enzo helping her because apparently he's all dirty from gardening, and Nina tries to keep the house so clean. Sure, Jan. She even questions Millie why she no longer wears her glasses and says that she didn't even find any contact solution in the bathroom. Millie walked right into this one actually by lying that she changed her glasses for contacts when she got hired, but why is Nina paying such close attention to Millie? That's kind of strange. Nina even goes as far as to instruct Millie to pick up Cecilia from school, but gives Millie the wrong school name, which as a reader seems totally deliberate, but Millie just keeps rolling with the punches. Millie is a pretty scrappy character, so she figures out where she's actually supposed to go and finds Cecilia, but when she does, another mother tells Millie that she always picks up Cecilia from school on Wednesdays, and she's kind of confused why Millie's even here. When the mother calls Nina to figure out what the deal is, Nina says that Millie got things mixed up again because obviously she never asked Millie to pick up Cecilia from school in the first place. Millie worries that Nina isn't just eccentric, but that maybe she's also mentally unstable. At the same time, she really needs this job, so all she can do is put up with Nina and her eccentricities, make mental notes of things she shouldn't and should do, and again, just hope for the best. So for a bit, things seem to be okay. Nina is kind again. She promises to look into the window that doesn't open in the attic. She gives Millie the key to the attic, which Millie's been asking for, and she even gifts Millie a bunch of white and beige dresses that she can no longer fit into. And then she also shares the exciting news that she and Andrew are planning to have another baby. So you would think, oh, Nina's being nice, she's opening up to Millie. No, things get worse again. And it's not the fact that Nina is messy to the point where she leaves a bloody tampon on the floor for Millie to pick up, which is already bad in and of itself, but she actually accuses Millie of not cleaning well when she is not around and forces Millie to show Nina how she cleans while Nina watches. By this point, Millie has discovered the pills in Nina's cabinet, pills used by people who suffer from psychosis. In a way, she's trying to justify Nina's actions, saying that maybe she's just mentally ill, that she can't help it. But as a reader, there's something about the humiliation rituals that Nina keeps putting Millie through that seem almost performative. Millie desperately needs answers, but when she tries to approach Enzo to get some dirt on Nina, he avoids her again. The one person she has grown to like in this entire mansion situation, and maybe like a bit too much, is actually Nina's husband, Andrew. Andrew's kind to Millie, he defends Millie in front of Nina, he invites Millie to eat dinner with the family even though most of the time Millie says no, because she senses that despite the baggy clothes that she wears, Nina is still feeling jealous. Andrew even helps Millie clean up after the missing PTA note debacle and doesn't seem thrown off by Nina's behavior, which makes it clear to Millie that this probably isn't the first time Nina has blown up at somebody. Millie feels bad for Andrew when she's not thinking about how hot he is. He also feels like a kindred spirit because Millie figures that he probably is also forced into cleaning Nina's messes. That's why when she gathers her courage to go watch the Winchesters' TV after everybody's gone to bed, something she hasn't done because she's afraid that she's already skating on thin ice with Nina, and Andrew wants to join her, Millie's like, okay, we're not doing anything wrong, it should be fine. A part of Millie thinks that watching TV in sleeping clothes instead of the baggy ones that she tends to wear with her boss in boxers is maybe a bad idea, but this is the least bad decision that Millie makes in this book. So they watch Family Feud. Andrew tells Millie that Cecilia is definitely not allergic to peanut butter, which boggles Millie's mind, and mine as well, because what in the world is Nina on about then? And then, as much fun as they might be having watching Family Feud, by the way, was one of my favorite shows as a teenager, Nina comes downstairs and ruins it for everybody. Yes, Millie is definitely attracted to Andrew, but nothing bad has happened. But this is Nina's house, Millie is the hired help, and when Nina chews her out for wearing inappropriate clothes around the house, there really is nothing Millie can say without making it worse for herself. After Nina orders Andrew to go to bed, kind of like a child, weird dynamic Millie immediately picks up on, especially because he listens, Nina gets even meaner, if that's even possible by this point. In Nina's eyes, Millie is this trampy maid that Andrew wouldn't even consider cheating on Millie with. That might be the truth because Andrew hasn't hit on Millie once, but the comment really gets under Millie's skin. As you know, it would, because it's definitely a very nasty thing to say. As Andrew helps Millie get everything ready for a PTA meeting Nina is hosting in their house, another truth bomb is dropped. Cecilia isn't Andrew's biological daughter. Apparently, they got together when Cecilia was already a baby. But it's not like Millie has time to mull that over because the PTA ladies are here. The whole meeting is just a bunch of talk about gluten, vegan food, and Nina making horrible comments about how stupid and inadequate Millie is to the other women, with Millie around to hear everything because Nina insists that Millie stay in the spot where the meeting is actually taking place. If you thought that Nina was mean, her friends might actually even be meaner, which again, I didn't realize that was even possible, because when Nina brings up having a baby with Andrew, one of them pretty much says, I thought you were already pregnant because you're eating so much. So Nina's obviously kind of uncomfortable after hearing this comment, and when she walks off for a sec, the friends nitpick Nina's weight, her grown out roots. They comment on how crazy it is that somebody as hot as Andrew would stay being married to somebody like Nina, pretty much this like ugly, disgusting slob. They even openly discuss Nina's stint at a mental institution, which is again news to Millie, but not a total shocker at the same time. And still, even though Nina has been incredibly harsh to Millie for seemingly no reason, Millie actually feels bad. Sure, it's not like she never thought that Andrew could do better, but she ends up attributing Nina's awful behavior, again, to her illness, which in her mind is not something that Nina can help. And the fact that Andrew is staying by Nina's side actually makes Millie like Andrew even more. Remember when Nina brought up planning to have a baby with Andrew? Well, their fertility appointment takes place and it does not go well. Nina gets back home, she berates Millie over a mess that Millie actually didn't make, and then she storms off. At that point, Andrew confesses to Millie that Nina and he won't be able to have a baby after all, and that they're both devastated, which then explains why Nina is so aggressive, angry, and just brokenhearted. And again, very, very mean. That same evening, Millie is awoken by shouting. Something falls and breaks. So wanting to make sure everything is okay, Millie goes to check it out, only to overhear Nina shouting at Andrew. She's pretty much saying that it's her fault, that they can't have kids, and that maybe if he got together with somebody younger, he could have the biological child he's always wanted. And because Millie is the unluckiest girl in all of Long Island, Nina catches her listening in and accuses her of snooping. By that point, Millie notices a bloodstain on Nina's nightgown, and a dark thought crosses Millie's mind. What if Nina is lying when she says that she cut her hand when she maybe actually killed Andrew because they were having this very heated argument? And she also can't hear Andrew in the bedroom. When Nina tells Millie to go back to bed and she refuses because she wants to make sure Andrew is okay, we get the first instance of Millie refusing to do something that Nina has told her to do. It might seem like a small thing, but because this sudden courage is connected to Andrew's safety, Millie is effectively telling on herself. There might be nothing going on between her and Andrew, and there really isn't, but she is more attached to him and cares more about him than she lets on. And worst of all, Nina can tell. The hot and cold behavior continues when Nina is perfectly nice the following morning, which is something that Millie has been getting used to because it keeps happening so often. Nina's happy with the breakfast Millie makes her. She's excited about a Broadway show Andrew wants to bring her to cheer her up after the mess of the fertility appointment. And she tells Millie when she's free so Millie can buy the tickets for them. Then we get a reverse scene of Nina ordering Andrew to go to sleep and him complying. So a reverse of that. In this case, Andrew points out that there is a piece of egg on Nina's blouse, and after she apologizes, she seems almost scared, like she made a mistake, which strikes Millie as odd because why is a piece of egg on a blouse such a big deal? Still, Millie can't stop feeling at least a bit jealous of the life that Nina has, and she's starting to really fantasize about Andrew. The thing is, she would love to have a guy like Andrew swoop in and save her because at this point, Andrew seems to be, well, pretty much perfect. He's kind, he's rich, he's handsome, he's caring, and that's pretty much everything that Millie would love for herself. But obviously, it is not meant to be because she would never break up a marriage, and Andrew seems to be completely in love with Nina despite all of their issues. So Millie's solution to get all of the horniness out of her system is to sleep with Enzo, the landscaper. But when she tries to give him the hint that that's what she wants, he runs off again, which at this point isn't that strange because A, that's pretty much how most of their interactions have ended so far. B, they can't communicate right because of the language barrier, and C, he has the name Antonia tattooed on his arm, so Millie assumes that Antonia must be Enzo's girlfriend. Either way, it is totally humiliating for Millie, and she's like, oh my gosh, what have I done? But at least she gets a distraction in the form of a nanny she meets while waiting for Cecilia to finish up her tap dancing lesson. The nanny knows all about Nina's reputation, as do most people on Long Island apparently. Plus, she tells Millie something that Millie did not know. The reason why Nina ended up in the mental hospital was because, listen to this, she tried to drown baby Cecilia in the tub and then to unalive herself too. I mean, this just sounds absolutely awful, but the thing is that Nina clearly loves Cecilia. As unpredictable as Nina is and has been, and as many times as she told Millie one thing only for her to change her mind minutes later and accuse Millie of just not paying attention, Millie doesn't truly think that Nina's love for Cecilia could be an act. It just seems so genuine. That being said, Millie has heard about Nina being mentally unstable from, well, multiple people by this point, so she has no reason not to believe them. And if this is really what got Nina committed, it would also explain why Enzo seems so scared of Nina and why he warned Millie that staying at the Winchester mansion is dangerous. So things slowly seem to be adding up for Millie. Millie and Andrew have a moment. Nothing happens really, but they do share a look, and she now suspects that he might feel something for her, just like she feels something for him. That being said, Millie wants to keep her job. She kind of has to because she's on parole. So she does her best to keep her feelings in check and to avoid Andrew like he is the plague, even though they do live in the same house, so that's not always the easiest thing to do. Things get really awkward when Andrew gets home from work because Nina has done it again. She told Millie exactly when she'd be free, so Millie bought the Broadway tickets and she booked them a room at the Plaza Hotel, only for Nina to tell her that she got the dates mixed up and that she can't go because she's taking Cecilia to stay away camp that same day. All the previous gaslighting aside, this time Millie is sure, completely sure, that she did not get the dates mixed up. But even if she has that part down, she can't for the life of her figure out why Nina keeps doing this. Why is she trying to make Millie think that she's crazy? What is going on? Just as he's been doing lately though, Andrew sides with Millie, which just angers Nina more. So Andrew promises to get a refund because I'm pretty sure Nina threatens to take the money out of Millie's paycheck. Unfortunately, he's not able to get a refund. However, he not only doesn't take the ticket and the room cost out of Millie's paycheck, he actually offers the tickets and the hotel to Millie, which really is a very, very kind thing to do. And here comes another bad choice on Millie's part. When Andrew offers to accompany Millie, because Millie says that the reason why she can't go, well, one of the reasons is because she has no one to go with, Millie's like, okay, Plaza Hotel room is just a loss at this point, but we'll see what happens with it later. So things are finally on the up and up, or it seems so. Nina is gonna be gone for a while, so Millie is gonna get a breather, which is amazing. Millie finally has the perfect excuse to wear one of the expensive dresses that Nina gave her, and when Andrew sees Millie all dressed up with the makeup done and everything, he is not even trying to hide the fact that he is checking Millie out. Yep. And so Millie lets herself have her Cinderella moment. We're gonna be talking a lot about Cinderellas this month, it seems. Hint, hint at what my next video was probably gonna be. Basically, all that Millie really wants is one night of, well, hopefully tame fun, which is going to allow her to experience the life that Nina Winchester, she thinks, has been taking for granted. So Millie is excited about literally everything. The show, the French dinner that Andrew ends up taking her to, the way Andrew keeps looking at her legs, and also the wine. So much wine. And they end up drinking so much of it that they end up making out in a cab and later having sex at the Plaza Hotel. What a shocker is all I'm gonna say. Millie doesn't regret it, and neither does Andrew. They're also both in agreement that this is a one-time thing. It can never happen again. Nina is not supposed to find out. But then Andrew goes as far as to say that he wishes he met Millie earlier, meaning before he and Nina got married, which both confuses Millie and kind of gets her hopes up when she knows that as incredible as Andrew is, there really is no way that they can be together. Or can they? At this point, she's going with they can't, but she's still holding out hope. They don't speak on the way back to Long Island, so she feels this distance between them. Enzo, who Andrew's kind of getting annoyed with because he always seems to be working on their property when he's got so many other jobs, visibly judges them when he sees them come home because he's like, I know exactly what you've been up to. Basically, it's an all-around bad time for everybody. So when Nina returns that afternoon, Millie can't help but scrutinize Nina and once again wonder what Andrew sees in her. Up to this point, Millie has held back and stayed in her lane as she was supposed to, but the combination of spending the night with Andrew and having Nina treat her so horribly this entire time makes all of the bitterness just come out. Nina has the life that Millie wants, she has the man that Millie wants, and in Millie's eyes, she just does not deserve either. But when Nina brings up the fact that she called the house phone last night, meaning the night that Millie and Andrew had their, little affair, nobody answered and she wants to know why. That pretty much returns Millie back to a reality. She's the other woman, she broke Nina's trust, and it's not only that Nina's going to be devastated if she finds out, she's also going to absolutely ruin Millie's life. But Millie figures that Nina probably already knows or at least suspects something when at dinner, she outright asks Millie how the food was in prison. Obviously, Andrew knows nothing about the prison thing, and Millie thought that Nina didn't either because that's why she hired Millie in the first place. But whoop, there it is. And when Millie runs back to her room completely devastated and finds the playbill from the Broadway show she and Andrew went to on her nightstand, even though Millie is sure she kept it in her pocket so Nina wouldn't suspect anything, Millie realizes that it's all too late. Nina absolutely knows, and this is her sly way of letting Millie know that she's just made an enemy out of her. By chapter 31, Nina's torture techniques become even more sick. For example, she sends Millie shopping. Then she calls the supermarket to inform the security that she noticed Millie stealing, even though she didn't steal a thing. But Millie still ends up getting taken to the security office and her bags get searched, which again, for somebody who's been to prison and who does not want to go back, this is not just humiliating, but also very, very scary, because stealing essentially a single hot Cheeto would probably land her back in prison, and she just does not want that. So, as you can imagine, Millie is in a tough spot. She is afraid of what Nina might do to her and wants to leave the house. She's also finally admitted to herself that she is in love with Andrew, but since the prison revelation, they haven't really spoken, which breaks Millie's heart. But then she also just can't quit her job because she needs the money and she'd be out on the streets again. Millie is desperate to clear her conscience when she sees Andrew on the back porch one night, mostly because she doesn't want him to think badly of her, because again, she has feelings for him. But even though this is Andrew's opportunity to fish for answers, he doesn't push Millie to tell him why she went to prison. And despite the prison revelation, he says that being with Millie was the first time in a while that he's felt, well, actually happy. And then he kisses her, which seems like the worst possible idea because Nina is in the house. So if we compare Millie at the start of the novel to Millie at the current point, there's definitely a huge change. She is getting more and more reckless, and she cares about pleasing Nina less and less, despite everything she has to lose. And it's all got to do with her crush on Andrew. She's also gradually starting to make excuses for her and Andrew's behavior, which as a reader you can kind of support, I guess, based on just how diabolical and unhinged Nina is to pretty much everybody around her, but you can't support it fully because it is just not right. This is when the story reaches because there are many, one of its breaking points. On a rainy day, I guess for an added dramatic effect, Nina does what I've expected would happen for a while now. She accuses Millie of stealing the dresses that she gave her at the start of the story, because it just seemed like such a sweet thing to do. And then once we get to know Nina, it's like, I don't think she would actually do this. So Andrew, who we think is completely over Nina's behavior, just over Nina in general, not only tells her that Nina can't even fit into those dresses anymore, hello fat shaming, but that he believes Millie absolutely did not steal them. And then, get this, he outright tells Nina that he's not in love with her anymore, and he kicks Nina out of the house. So Nina obviously begs, which is not something we've seen Nina do, well, ever, but Andrew is super cold, but at this point his coldness makes sense. He tried his best, but Nina made his life a living hell. She's made Millie's life a living hell. And even though there's no excuse for cheating, definitely not, you could say that what's happening now is kind of Nina's own doing, or at least that's the way that the book tries to present it. Now, this part was completely unhinged. So Millie asks Nina if she can help her pack, which seems like it comes from a kind place, but girl, is this really the best thing to say when she knows that Andrew is at least partly leaving her for you? But then Millie and Andrew start making out as soon as Nina leaves, so I guess Millie's not really concerned about any of it. Now, as soon as Nina is out of the picture, Millie's life completely changes. She and Andrew are together. I think she even calls him her boyfriend. He doesn't want her to work, which means that she can feel free to be pretty much the lady of the house, really. There's no one to yell at her or to gaslight her. She doesn't have to deal with bratty Cecilia, who hates her bologna sandwiches and pretends to have a peanut allergy. Life is good for Millie. Or so it seems, until Millie not only starts getting calls from blocked numbers, but Enzo, who's just been fired by Andrew, by the way, tells her in completely perfect English, mind you, that Millie has to leave the house because she is in terrible danger. So no more pericolo, it's full-on English. They're communicating. Still convinced that Nina is the one who Enzo is afraid of, Millie assures him that she's totally fine because Nina's gone, so she'll be okay. And then Andrew comes up and Enzo skedaddles again. But the calls continue, one of them being someone warning Millie to stay away from Andrew. But at this point, Millie is so happy and she trusts Andrew completely that she chalks it up to Nina trying to scare her and throws it completely out of her mind. Millie has all of these plans. She's going to change the lock so Nina can't come back back and bother them. She's gonna move out of the attic and into one of the bedrooms. Maybe not the master bedroom because it still smells of Nina and she's like traumatized by everything and anything to do with Nina. And with all these beautiful plans made, she decides to give the attic a proper send-off by having sex with Andrew in the attic. Only when she wakes up the next morning alone and she wants to go to the bathroom, she realizes that she is locked in, like really locked in this time. And at this point of the book is where we jump into Nina's POV. So she's been portrayed as a monster up until this point. So as the reader, the expectation is that she's the one pulling the string and that this will be a revenge story. But what we end up getting is something a bit different because get this, even though Andrew, who was her boss by the way, took her, a single mother of one, married her and gave her a beautiful life, he's been hiding an ugly secret. Yep, he has a thing about finding the littlest faults in the women he dates and deciding that the logical thing to do is to lock them in the attic and put them through what he calls punishments until they've learned a lesson. It is actually so interesting to watch Nina go from thinking that the door is accidentally locked the first time this happens, or that maybe Andrew is just joking, to realizing Andrew actually locked her in. Mind you, it's over the fact that she forgot to dye her roots. The punishments are actually sick. Nina recalls how he made her pull out 100 strands of hair out of her own head, put them in an envelope, and slide the envelope underneath the attic door because she was locked in. He promises to let her out once he's sure that she's learned about the importance of taking care of one's hair. That's his goal, to make Nina a better, a more conscientious person. But when he counts the hairs, or at least he says he does, which is diabolical business, he decides that one of the 100 hairs does not have a root and makes her start all over. And no begging or pleading that Nina does helps or makes him see a reason. And what's even sicker is that he actually seems to enjoy having complete control, and his calmness, which definitely contrasts with Nina clawing at the door and screaming. And by the way, this is a throwback because in the beginning of the book, when we're in Millie's POV and she goes into the attic, she notices these long, almost like nail marks in the door and she's not sure where they came from. Well, now we know. But yeah, Andrew's calmness as Nina is clawing at the door and screaming is actually even more terrifying than if he were like actively screaming at her. At least that's how it reads to me. This torture is calculated and psychological as much as it is physical because he leaves her without much water, he starves her, he leaves her with practically no choice but to comply with his requests. So more hair comes out. Hours later, he's happy with the work that she's done and he eventually lets her out, but she's very weak. He's nice to her, he buys her flowers, jewelry, and it seems like maybe things will be okay because she really cannot leave at this point. But Nina misbehaves again. So what does Andrew do? Well, he puts Cecilia in the tub and fills it with water. Then he calls the police on Nina and says that she's having a psychotic episode and she's gonna kill the baby and herself. And then suddenly he's the most caring husband when Nina is in the psychiatric hospital, drugged and also convinced that she not only had a breakdown and imagined all of the horrible things that Andrew has done to her, but that she also almost killed her baby. So she is taking all of this as complete truth because Andrew is so amazing. How could he ever do this to her? So when Nina returns home and her psychiatrist that now she's supposed to see insists that she needs to conquer her fear of the attic and go back there, Andrew is kind enough to go to the attic with her to show her that she has nothing to be afraid of, only for Andrew to lock Nina in again. And so Nina realizes that she is not crazy. After 7 years of marriage, Nina has completely accepted her fate. In some ways, Andrew has also been the perfect husband, which is like a weird contradiction. He takes care of her and Cecilia. He doesn't drink or cheat. Well, not yet. And yet, he's sick in the head and the punishments continue. So Nina decides to take a bit of a different approach. Since he won't let her leave him, Nina does everything she can to repulse him. She eats whatever she wants, which is why Millie finds all these wrappers stuffed in like the crooks of the bed and stuff. She yells at him, and interestingly enough, he seems to like being treated in these abusive ways, which doesn't make much sense to Nina or to me as a reader when I was reading this the first time. But things keep getting worse. Turns out Cecilia is allergic to peanut butter, and Andrew keeps sneaking some into her food to give her a rash on purpose because he is just an asshole. If Nina does something wrong in his eyes, back to the attic she goes. If Cecilia steps out of line like kids do, back to the attic Nina goes. So Andrew doesn't put Cecilia in the attic for reasons that aren't explained, but realizing that her mother is being punished and it's her fault definitely affects Cecilia psychologically. Nina is so broken and she can't trust anyone, but she needs to tell somebody what's happening because she's going to explode. So she tells the only person who can't really tattle on her, unlike her friend Suzanne, who she opens up to in a different scene, and then gets snitched on, which results in another mental hospital stint. So thank you, Suzanne. At this point, Nina decides to tell Enzo. Only what do you know? Enzo speaks perfect English, and he only pretended to not understand English so that the rich ladies who hire him to do landscaping would stop hitting on him, which is pretty funny and clever in the midst of all of this awfulness. So I kind of appreciated that little bit in that chapter. After Nina makes the horrible mistake of buying air freshener that irritates Andrew's eyes, oh my goodness, how could she? He locks her in the attic again and forces her to, listen to this, pepper spray herself in the face. What in the Saw movies is happening? Nina is happy with her choice to secretly get an IUD so that she couldn't have kids with Andrew because she can't stand the thought of there being another person like Cece that she loves for him to be able to hold over her head whenever he wants to torture her and to keep her in this marriage and in this house. So Nina's a little sneaky and she does what she needs to do. At this point in the story, Nina confides in Enzo about everything that's been happening, and he says that he wants to kill Andrew dead. The reaction makes sense when we learn that Antonia isn't a girlfriend. She was actually Enzo's sister who got killed by an abusive husband that she was not able to leave. Regretful that he couldn't save her, Enzo promises to save Nina and Cecilia. Their first attempt, the plan to have Nina take on a fake identity and fly herself and Cece far away, doesn't work out because Andrew finds money and fake IDs in a safety deposit box. Plan is foiled, but Enzo wants to go to plan B then, to pretty much kill Andrew himself, even if that means going to jail or at least getting deported because he's from Sicily. But Nina cannot ask him to do this because it would just be way too much. But then Nina gets another idea. She might hate Andrew's guts, and she does, but she also knows him. That's why what she has planned is going to work. She's completely sure of it. And this is where the story comes full circle. So Nina figures that if Andrew won't let her go, she will just have to get him a replacement. A young, beautiful girl who could give Andrew kids. Somebody who's just desperate enough so Andrew can do what he does best, which is save a damsel in distress just like he saved her. So after he gives her the life she's always wanted, he can treat her as his personal punching bag. And so enter Miss Millie Calloway. Enzo is a stand-up guy, so he doesn't love the idea of sacrificing another girl, but Nina is going full throttle with the idea. She figures that since Millie doesn't have any kids, when things get bad, and they probably will, she can simply leave. So Enzo gives in and agrees to help. She times the hire of Millie perfectly. Not only is she out on parole and looking for a job, but Andrew's parents moved to Florida, and they actually do need help with Cecilia and kind of upkeeping the house. Plus, Andrew is getting kind of sick of the house being filthy and of having to eat horrible meals because Nina's just completely given up. Putting Millie up in the attic could be a problem because this is where Andrew tortures Nina, but she makes a good point. If they put Millie in the guest bedroom, what happens when Andrew's parents come to visit? Because apparently they have no idea of Andrew's, antics. She's like, are you going to put them in the torture attic? Like, how is this gonna work? So Andrew is sour about this whole thing until Millie cleans the house, cooks him the perfect dinner, and he also realizes how pretty she is. Suddenly, he no longer sees a problem with Millie hanging around at all. And Nina called it. She did. Being hot and cold, making Millie feel bad so Andrew would have a chance to play the hero and to rescue her. As bad as Nina feels doing all of these things, it is definitely deliberate on her part because she needs to push Millie and Andrew together. What's also deliberate is making sure that Millie and Andrew end up going to the Broadway show and the Plaza Hotel together. By then, Nina is sure that Andrew has taken the bait and that he is in love, or at least in lust, with Millie. We get back to present day, where Nina is finally relieved that Andrew has kicked her out and she is free. Well, not totally just yet, because she'll only truly be free when they get a divorce, but for now it's good enough. She plans to pick up Cecilia from camp and disappear with her, and since Andrew did not adopt Cecilia, he has no claim on her anyway. When Nina meets with Enzo and tells him that she's finally free, they end up sleeping together, which honestly came out of the blue. I didn't really get that vibe between them because it kind of seemed like a brother-sister relationship, so it kind of weirded me out, to be honest. Anyways, when Enzo once again brings up how uncomfortable he is with leaving Millie in Andrew's clutches, this is where some of Nina's own ugliness comes out. She says that her fate does not matter because Millie is a criminal. Plus, she slept with her husband, so she's far from a saint anyway. Still, Enzo threatens to tell Millie that she is in danger and that she needs to run, which I guess explains the whole "you're in danger," pericolo, all of those things. In chapter 51, we transition into Millie's POV. So when we left her, she just realized that she was locked in the attic, which at first, just like Nina did, she attributes to a faulty door, or maybe Andrew just playing a joke on her. But when she finds heavy books on the US prison system in the room, and Andrew tells her that the only way she will be let out is if she stacks the books on her stomach and holds them there for 3 hours as punishment for, listen to this, for taking the books off his bookshelf and not putting them back neatly, Millie realizes that the sweet, loving, caring Andrew has been nothing but an illusion. We go through the same back and forth as we did with Nina, because again, Millie thinks it's a sick joke, she screams, she begs to be let out, she has to pee in the bucket because she can't go to the bathroom because she can't leave the attic. Just like Nina, Millie plans to get the hell out of the house as soon as Andrew does let her out, which he still promises to do. But first of all, she needs to comply with his demands. So she tries to fool him, but she finds out that Andrew actually can see her because he has an HD camera installed in the attic, because of course he does, because he is a sicko. So after having to repeat the book torture twice because she didn't do it right, whatever that means, the first time, Andrew finally lets her out. He's not only unfazed about what he just did, because according to him, this is his way of making Millie better, which is like his version of self-improvement, I guess. But when she's thinking about escaping, he throws parole in her face. If she tells anybody what happened or decides to leave, he will say that she stole something from the house and she is gonna go right back to jail. So then we slip back into Nina's POV and learn what she found out about Millie's past. So apparently the reason Millie did the 10-year sentence is because when she was at boarding school for kids with, I guess, behavior issues, she went to a party, she caught a guy assaulting her best friend, and she bashed him in the head, killing him to save her best friend. And this wasn't the only violent incident attached to Millie's past. Apparently Millie shoved a kid at school and hurt him, she slashed her teacher's tires, she even punched a coworker at the job that she had prior to coming to work for Nina. So now that Nina has all of this additional information, Nina's like, wait a minute, I think I should change my plan. Millie won't just be a replacement because she can serve an even better purpose. She can actually kill Andrew and permanently get him out of Nina's life. So she's like, yes, plan B, here we go. So we're back in Millie's POV, and this is where the story subverts our expectations again. So Nina has left the bottle of pepper spray that she had to use on herself chapters earlier. She left it in the attic, and Millie does not hesitate to use it on Andrew, as she should. But if you remember, it is not the only thing that Nina has given Millie. She also gave Millie a key to the attic, which Millie uses to lock Andrew in. Yes. The thing is, Nina did pick the right girl. Not that Nina was stupid or inadequate, but Millie has had her freedom taken away before. And the last thing she will allow is for it to happen again. Plus, Millie has been hardened by life, and she also doesn't stand for men being abusive. So we watch Andrew get a taste of his own medicine. Andrew's shift from the perfect man to a sicko was very jarring and honestly kind of scary, but it's nothing like seeing Millie mimic Nina and Andrew combined by keeping him locked in the attic, giving him punishments, and acting completely aloof when he begs to be let out or even threatens to kill Millie once he is free. Because at this point, he's like, I'm totally getting out, and you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Only Millie has no plans to set him free at all. She makes him do the book thing he made her do, except he has to balance the books on his crotch, and they're super heavy books. She tells him to do it for 3 hours, but when he's done, she pulls a Nina and says, no, I definitely said 5, so you better start again. Millie seems to be totally in her element as she does this, which again is kind of chilling. She makes herself a sandwich, she pretends to be Andrew and answers his mom's text. She does a whole morning routine the next morning. She's got things to do, okay? So eventually the guilt has eaten away at Enzo and sort of at Nina too, because she gives in and agrees to go back to the house to check on Millie and to get her out if, you know, Andrew in fact did lock her in the attic. So this might have been Nina's only way out, but she now sees how wrong it is to put another woman in danger. But little do they know, Millie is in the Winchester mansion making Andrew pull out his own teeth with pliers, and she's really in no danger at all. And by the way, I'm not exaggerating, she does make him do that. So when Nina finally gets back to the house, ready to pull Millie out of the attic, she is surprised to find Andrew in there, dead and decomposed because it's been days. When Millie appears and sees the body, the extent of what she's done finally dawns on her. Then Nina, one of the things I was critical after having read the book, tells Millie that she won't let Millie go to prison again, that Millie needs to run because Nina's gonna take the fall for what happened, and we'll touch on this in my review section. So once Millie is out, Nina does what she promised. She calls the police and she waits. So in chapter 60, we end up where we were in the prologue. Detectives have come to check out Andrew's body and the entire attic and to see what's going on. Nina's story is that Andrew must have accidentally locked himself in the attic. She thought he went on a business trip, never checked the attic, and well, the rest is history. But the thing is, not all the pieces fit together because there are bruises on Andrew's body from the heavy books and he's missing teeth. But this is where we get another twist. Andrew was engaged to another girl before he met Nina. The detective who is investigating the case, Connor, is the girl's father. So the girl, Kathleen, managed to break things off with Andrew, and things did not end well, it seems. And even though she never told her dad exactly what happened, he suspects that there is a reason why Kathleen hasn't been able to date a single man since the breakup. She definitely seems to come out of this relationship very, very damaged. So feeling like this might also be him getting justice for Kathleen, he's like, you know what? Looks like an accident to me. So in the last chapter of the book, chapter 61, Andrew is in a coffin and no one goes to jail. But at his wake, we get a second to last shocker, because we do have another, of the novel, because Andrew's uptight and honestly kind of creepy mom, Evelyn, shows up. She spoke to the detective. She knows all about the bruises and the missing teeth. So Nina is getting, well, pretty much ready to be hauled off to jail. But Evelyn, perfectly calm voice too, basically says that she always told Andrew to brush his teeth as a kid, and that she thought he had learned his lesson when she pulled one of his baby teeth with pliers as punishment when he was a kid. So the final reveal is that not only did Andrew pick up this sadistic behavior and punishing those around him from his own mother, but Evelyn is actually content that Nina stepped up and taught Andrew his own lesson, even if it resulted in him losing his life. What is this family? In the epilogue, we jump into Millie's POV for one final time. So almost a year has gone since Andrew's death and the whole attic incident. Even though Millie hasn't had to go crazy looking for a stable job because Nina gave her money that lasted her almost the entire year, it is time for Millie to find a more permanent, work situation. So Millie's being interviewed for a new housekeeper job. Unlike the position at the Winchester house that threw her life into more chaos than ever before, this time Millie did not even apply. So Lisa, the wealthy woman who was looking for some help around the house, actually reached out to Millie on Nina's recommendation. So Millie thinks maybe this is Nina's way of saying thank you for what Millie has done for her, and also maybe sorry for the way that she treated her, even though she was only putting on an act, and this was Nina's way of escaping and actually having a life that she could live with Cecilia. But when Lisa reveals a bruise on her arm, Millie finally understands that Lisa doesn't need help with changing bed sheets and catching dust bunnies. What she's actually asking is much more specific than that. By the time Lisa finally asks if Millie can help out loud, Millie has already made up her mind. She can, and she will. So I had to take a tea break because my voice is not in the room with us anymore. Anyways, so this was the first Freida McFadden book I've ever read. I've read other ones since, including the rest of the Housemaid series, which the first book is here, and then I have the rest in one of the shelves behind me. So now I know how Freida formulates her stories and what sort of twists we can expect. However, when I read The Housemaid the first time, it did exactly what you want a thriller to do. It made me see Nina as a threat, and then completely subverted my expectations when Andrew showed his true colors, and I love that. I feel like she's followed a similar formula in her other books, so now without even meaning to, I end up being very aware of it, which kind of takes away some of the magic, but at the same time, that's what made The Housemaid work for me. Personally, for me, it's not really fun to spend the whole book in the head of somebody who's either an airhead or kind of like a leaf in the wind, I like to say. The story carries them whatever the character needs to go for the plot to kind of keep going. So when it comes to both Millie and Nina, they both read pretty smart to me, and their reasoning behind staying, in Nina's case, staying in the marriage, and then in Millie's case, for staying in the job, held up throughout the book, so I did enjoy both of their POVs. Andrew was written as somebody who's kind and someone whom I felt I needed to empathize with, and I did. So when the twist came, it really got me, and I think it's going to work amazing in the movie as well. The pacing felt good to me. I like sort of quick, snappy chapters in thriller, so I got that too. Basically, the story held up from the beginning of the book till the end of the book, and then the author also seamlessly wove in the ending, which then nicely sets up the sequels. There are 2 more books and then also a novella. Never knowing which version of Nina I was gonna get in any given chapter, her behavior becoming more and more vindictive, and Millie and Andrew's attraction sort of growing alongside all of that chaos in every chapter, kept the tension high, and you do want the tension to be high in a thriller. I did read some reviews where other people were saying that revealing Evelyn as the ultimate villain was kind of, I guess, a way of excusing Andrew's behavior, and I see it, but I didn't fully see it that way. I thought it actually would have been pretty unsatisfying if Andrew was evil just kind of for the sake of being evil. So wrapping up that plot point, I don't know, it just felt right. And even though I didn't agree with all of Millie's choices, and I definitely did not side with Nina until her POV, I found myself rooting for both of them at different points of the narrative. So let's talk about things that did not work as well. So The Housemaid was a genuinely great time. That being said, no book is perfect, so there were definitely a few things that took me out of the story. Not in a major way, but I feel like I should still mention them just in case. Millie not being more persistent about figuring out what Enzo meant when he told her that she was in danger. So sure, later in the book she figures that he's warning her about Nina, but I feel like logically she had plenty of time before that realization to ask him to clarify. By this point, Millie has a smartphone, so the language barrier can't be an excuse either. She could have just used like Google Translate or something, just like she did when she didn't know what pericolo meant. So this felt like one of those, let's just let this slide because it needs to happen for the plots. So let's talk about character motivations. So Millie's slowly starting to convince herself that getting into a relationship with Andrew and pushing Nina out made sense to me for a few reasons. Millie's giving into Andrew's charms and the vision of a life he could give her. The resentment Millie feels toward Nina for the way that she treats her and how she feels Nina doesn't appreciate what she has keeps building and building until Millie feels justified in taking her place, which is not right, but that's how she feels. Because Millie's nice, she can make Andrew happy, and she deserves to be happy too. That's kind of how Millie is going through life at this point in the book. So while I don't condone Millie's actions, I understand Millie's motivations. What actually didn't feel organic to me, even after the third read/listen, because I read the book twice and then I listened to it on audiobook, is the way that Nina flips towards the end of the book. Now I'm referring to how at first she wants nothing but to get away with Cecilia and let Millie deal with Andrew. She gives all the excuses like Millie can handle it, Millie has an easier time getting away, maybe Millie deserves what she's got coming, you know, she's a criminal, she slept with my husband, so basically who cares what happens to Millie, right? But then then almost as if somebody's flipped a light switch, Nina's like, you know what, I actually do care about Millie so much that I will take the fall for Andrew's death, even though I had nothing to do with it. Well, not directly anyway. And then suddenly she doesn't care about Cecilia probably going to live with Evelyn, whom she doesn't really like that much, or that she'd either have to spend the rest of her life in prison or a mental institution, when all she's wanted this entire book is to be free, and she's not cared about Millie that much, to be honest. So I guess, yeah, you could say that Nina's conscience finally kicks in, or that we've been watching her flip and change her mind for the entirety of the book, so it's kind of expected for this to happen anyway. But how hard she schemed to finally be free and how much she wants to protect Cecilia ends up invalidating both of those explanations, at least for me personally. And I still have a hard time buying that Nina's change of heart is genuine. So it happens, I accept it, I kind of just let it go as it goes, but just it did not feel organic to me. And now I sound like Kourtney Kardashian.
House has nothing organic in it for me to eat.
That being said, I think this is the perfect book to adapt for the big screen. I'm gonna hold off from talking about the casting until the book to movie adaptation deep dive, although I can say that casting Michele Morrone as Enzo is top notch because he's exactly who I've pictured in my head listening to the audiobook and reading the physical copy. Brendan Sklenar was really good as Atlas in It Ends With Us, I thought, but what I need him to do is I need him to really sell Andrew's switch. When he's in his, you have to be punished avatar, so to speak, he's a completely different person, and I really need to believe it for it to work, which I feel like he can do. I'm feeling pretty good about this. I feel like some of the things Nina does to Millie will have to be condensed to fit within the 2 hour and 11 minute screen time, but I hope they give us enough flashbacks of Nina's time in the attic and then spend enough time on the scene where Andrew kicks Nina out. I feel like with the rain adding to the atmosphere and what we think at the time are high stakes, I think the scene will work really, really well on screen. Also, I'll say it again, give us all the Enzo you want to give us because there is no such thing as too much Enzo. Thank you. And that is The Housemaid, aka the ultimate reminder to never accept a live-in job if your designated bedroom door locks from the outside. Just don't do it. I'm dying to see how the movie adopts the story, so keep an eye out on the channel for a full book to movie breakdown once the movie drops. Thanks for hanging out with me. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.